for the day. Vetri, hi, good morning. Good speaking with you. The market has been very volatile of late. What do you think has been worrying the market the most?
Right. I think the only thing I would sort of disagree with is I'm not sure I'd call the market as being particularly volatile. It certainly perhaps looked up marginally compared to the lows that we saw for volatility maybe last year. But this is pretty much within the normal range of volatility for the Indian markets. I mean, if you look at the volatility of Indian markets over the longer term, whether 10 years, 15 years, then these are not particularly volatile or exceptional times. I think the whole trading range for the market this year is 15%, which is not very abnormal for India going by past history. But clearly there's a lot more, global news flow, and, each of that is having an impact on India as well. But, we're not really isolated as an island, so I think that's par for the course.
Morning, Vetri. Good to have you with us. Well, Bihar election, the one that's on our head, is it really that big a trigger, or are we making too much?
Some sort of talk about the implications of the Bihar elections on policy making, but to be honest, I'm not sure it really makes that big a difference.
Okay, so Bihar elections doesn't make that big a difference, but let's talk about some sectors now. You're overweight on the auto sector in all the funds that you named, so names like Maruti, Hero, etc. What makes you so bullish?
Okay, so let's just step back one level before the auto space and essentially look at it from the point of view that, when you look at the Indian corporate profitability, there are several reasons to believe that right now it is depressed compared to, typical trends that we've seen in the past. And therefore, at some point during a recovery in the economy, we do think that cyclical companies can see slightly stronger profit growth. In that context, we think the auto companies are quite well placed. Essentially, they've got the tailwind of lower raw material prices, though I don't think that is necessarily fully sustainable. But they've also got the benefit that lower fuel prices means that it's easier for consumers to justify buying a high-ticket consumer durable like autos. And interest rates are also coming down, which, if anything, on margin is supportive for the purchase of automobiles. So I think just in the cyclical domain, this is one area where we think the companies fundamentals are pretty strong. The possible outlook in terms of demand recovery is supportive, and valuations are not cheap, but they're reasonable. So that's what within the cyclical domain makes this for us a very preferred area to invest in.
Okay, on earnings, Vetri, is the worst out in terms of earnings downgrades, or do you think this season also is going to be more downgrades than upgrades?
I think that earnings are clearly trending lower, unfortunately, but I would say again this was expected. If you see from the time the earnings season started, earnings have been cut by almost 100 basis points, even for broader indices like the BSE 100, with about maybe a third of the companies reporting. So the trend, I think, overall is in terms of earnings cuts. But I would say it's not really been an extremely disappointing earnings season, simply because perhaps analysts have caught up with the sort of trend in earnings movement. But I think you will most probably see that by the time the earnings season gets over, there will be further cuts to both FY16 growth estimates and also FY17 growth estimates, because I still see that a lot of the FY17 growth estimates are still very aggressive, and they appear to be based on the fact that people had already factored in a strong recovery in FY16, and as we are now already in the second half of the year and the outlook for FY16 remains challenging, I think eventually even the FY17 earnings growth might start to get questioned a little. But I think the bigger challenge is just that, as of now, we just aren't seeing enough momentum across a broad range of sectors in terms of earnings growth, both because domestic demand is weak, as well as external demand has turned weak. So, sometime in 2014-15, we at least had a lot of companies which were servicing overseas markets showing strong earnings trajectory. Right now, even that has gone missing for a variety of reasons. So I think we are still in a challenging period for earnings estimates.
Okay, so still in a challenging period for earnings estimates. Let's talk about some stocks then. Axis Bank, are you worried now, and will you be trimming exposure or will you be accumulating at this point?
We don't comment on specific stocks or actions, but just looking at the big picture, I think the takeaway everybody should have from the kind of results they reported was really more to do with the kind of haircut which was required to be taken on those loans. And when we talk about stressed assets in the Indian banking sector, we need to keep in mind that it's not just a question of recognizing the stress, which would mean a small provision in your P&L account because you've recognized it as NPA, but more importantly to make some of these assets full, and in order for them to being viable concerns going ahead, significant haircuts will be required to be taken on the loans, as this particular example shows, as well as some of the previous examples we have where companies have actually sold those assets down to ARCs. And my concern across the banking sector remains that not everybody has actually taken the kind of haircuts that are required on those loans, and institutions which don't have either the requisite level of pre-provisioning profitability or capital adequacy will find it even more difficult to recognize these hits as they come along. So I think it raises sector-wide issues, but I can't comment specifically on Axis Bank itself.
Okay, let me take the sector question then. Will you be trimming generally your exposure to private banks, especially those with exposure to infra cyclicals?
No, I think we're quite happy with the kind of portfolio structure we have at this point of time, and I think one of the things that we've always laid great emphasis on is on being invested in financials where the liability franchise is extremely strong, and at least where we have full transparency and visibility of the asset side in terms of the quantum of problem assets and how the bank will be able to absorb the hit as it comes through from those troubled assets. So I think that's a continuing sort of approach that we would have, and we are reasonably comfortable with our exposures the way we are, but these things are things that we revive every time we review as and when we get a new piece of information, and we'll continue to do that.
Okay, what's driving your underweight call on the FMCG and the energy stocks, considering that some of these stocks have done well?
I think on FMCG the issue is primarily got to do with valuations. We just find valuations over there way too rich. No doubt they're still managing to churn out some earnings growth, which looks pretty good in light of the fact that you've got earnings cuts coming through everywhere and you've got very weak corporate earnings growth. But the fact of the matter remains that all of that is already discounted in valuations which are extremely high and don't leave any forget margin of safety. They just don't give us any comfort whatsoever. So I would say on FMCG it's predominantly a concern on valuations. On energy, actually, the companies are very distinct and diverse from each other in terms of what drives their profitability. So there are some companies where we have significant underweight positions, but equally there are some energy companies where we are significantly overweight. It's just the fact that there are different business models there. There's upstream, there's downstream, and therefore you've got to treat each of these very differently. Typically we've tended to be a lot more overweight on the downstream refining and marketing names, more because of their marketing businesses, and we are overweight in that part of the energy sector.
Vetri, let me come to India's relative valuation. Do you think this relative premium that we have enjoyed needs to be trimmed and will be trimmed?
I think you've got to look at different issues. I mean, you can look at how we are trading relative to other regions. You can also look at how we are trading relative to our own history. And I would tend to place more emphasis on the latter in terms of how we are trading relative to our own history. And relative to our own history, we're not trading particularly cheap. I think on a trailing basis, the market, as in the Sensex, is now trading at close to about 18-19% premium to its long-term average, which is not particularly cheap in that sense. So I think there are issues in terms of market valuations. I think a lot of people recognize that India is in a good spot. It's in a sweet spot, if you want to use that word, and it is, because the macroeconomic fundamentals are quite positive. But then that's already reflected in the valuation. So then you've got to be a little bit more cautious in terms of how you go about arranging your portfolio, because if that's already in the price, then what are you paying for and what are you hoping to get over and above what's already visible. So I think in that sense valuations continue to remain a bit of a challenge for India at this point of time. In terms of what happens to valuations, I think history is fairly clear that valuations fluctuate. Valuations tend to mean revert. We were as high as a 30% premium at the start of this year. The premium has come off a bit, but it's not yet dropped down to what we would call a comfort zone, which is plus or minus 10% of the long-term average. So I think from a valuation perspective, we are not really in attractive territory at this point.
All right, Vetri, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your view. But let's move on to individual stocks now.